Lifnei Hashem titaru. In front of Hashem, you should become pure. What does that mean in front of Hashem? How are you in front of Hashem? Are we not always in front of Hashem? Wherever a person is, a person wakes up in the morning, a person uses the restroom, wherever you are, you're always in front of Hashem. What does this mean in front of Hashem? So let's take a look at this Gemara in Yuma. Tanu Rabbanan. We learned in a Braisa, Eser, I think there's a misprint there, just that aleph. Eser pa'amim mazkir kohen gadol es Hashem bay bayom. There are 10 times that the kohen gadol says Shema Mefarish. We do not pronounce Shema Mefarish. We say Ado. We don't pronounce it the way that it's written. There are 10 times on Yom Kippur that the kohen gadol would say the Shema Mefarish clearly the way it's written. Gimel bevidui, 3 times when he was saying vidui. Rishon, the first vidui. V'shleisha bevidui sheni, 3 times by the second time he said vidui. V'shleisha b'soyar mishtaleach, 3 more times when he would send the goat, when he did the when the goat was being sent to go off the cliff, and we'll talk about that hopefully a little later. The echad b'gayrolis, and 1 more time when they were casting lots to decide which goat would go. There were 2 goats, and we'll talk about that later. 1 goat was brought as a carbon oil, and 1 goat was sent as a chatas off a cliff. So there are 10 times over the course of the day of Yom Kippur that the Kohen Gadol would say Shem Hashem. He would say Shem Hashem out loud. Okay? Yeah. Well, it says sorry. Yeah, and the Torah calls it a chatas. But yeah. No, the sorry Hashem is sorry Hashem is an oil. No. It's in the Pesuk. Yeah. Okay. What? I can't. 1 time by the lotteries, they casted lotteries. But the point over here that you should get over here that the Kohen Gadol said Shem Hashem 10 times over Yom Kippur. Go ahead. The point over here is that the Kohen Gadol said Shem Hashem clearly out loud. He pronounced it the way that it's written 10 times over the day of Yom Kippur. Okay, let's continue on to the next piece. Mishnah Brura. Mishnah Brura brings down La'alacha. V'tzarich kol yachid loimar. Every individual on Yom Kippur must say Yud Viduyim. He has to say Vidui 10 times. B'yom HaKippurim on Yom Kippur. Just a point to note is that the mitzvah of the day of Yom Kippur is Vidui. So if you're going to say one thing during davening, if you're going to participate in one part of davening, make sure that it's vidui. Vidui must be said on Yom Kippur. Lefachos, at least 10 times. Daled ba'arba tfilos. We say vidui 4 times by the 4 tfilas. What are the 4 tfilas? Normally there's only 3. What? Okay. V'daled b'chazaras hashatz. And 4 times by the Chazaras Hashatz when the Chazan repeats the Shmeina Esrei, so that's 8. V'shtei pamim, and 2 more times echad b'mincha ve'echad b'mayrev. 1 by mincha and 1 by mayrev. Keneged yud pamim, and this corresponds to the 10 times Shaya Kohen Gadol maskir es Hashem b'yom HaKippurim, that the Kohen Gadol would say Hashem's name on Yom Kippur. So this Mishnah Brura is telling me that every single individual must say at least 10 times vidui on Yom Kippur. And where do we get this number 10? This corresponds to the Kohen Gadol's 10 times that he said Shem Hashem out loud on Yom Kippur. The next piece is a Sharat Tzion, which is also the Mishnah Brura, same author. He asks a question and he gives us an answer, and it's going to be important. Umasha oimer b'mayriv oid pam achas b'toichas slichos. Yom Kippur night, after we finish Shemina Esrei, the Chazan starts Slichas, and there's a few Slichas that we say Yom Kippur night, and during those Slichas we will say Vidui again. So it's not 10 times, asks the Sharat Tzion on himself, it's 11 times, because during Ma'ariv, after Ma'ariv, we say Slichas, and during Slichas we say Vidui another time. So he counted 10, asks the Sharat Tzion, it's not 10, there's 1 more, it's 11. Loi chashiv, we don't count that 1. Why not? The loi chashi, that we only count ela masha oimrim betfila, only the viduyim, only the viduyis that we say during tefillah. So the Chazan's tefillah, which would be the Chazar Sashatz, or our silent tefillah, that's also tefillah. We're only counting vidui that is said during tefillah. We're not counting the vidui that's said after Ma'ariv during Slichas, because that 11th vidui is not said during tefillah. We got through 3 pieces here. Let's shed a little bit of light on this, and then we'll move on to the next topic. We started off with a pasuk. It says that on this day, Hashem's going to give us forgiveness. He's going to be mitayir us. And we're given an instruction, lifnei Hashem, in front of Hashem, titaru. We all should purify ourselves. How do you purify yourself in front of Hashem? What does that mean to be in front of Hashem? Halachically speaking, over here, I believe that we're saying that the viduyim that we say correspond to the 10 times that the Kohen Gadol said Shem Hashem. When the Kohen Gadol evoked Shem Hashem, it creates some sort of situation, some sort of presence, some sort of intensity of being lifnei Hashem. When the Kohen Gadol said Shem Hashem out loud, even though we're always in front of Hashem, it created a more intense presence of Hashem, and that's when we're supposed to say vidui. Question a second. We're supposed to say vidui, we're supposed to be mitayir ourselves by saying al-chet, by saying chatasi, by confessing our aveiros only to the Rebbeinu Shalom, by the way. We don't confess our aveiros to people. Big difference between Yiddishkeit and others. Bein Adam l'chaver is different because you have to make amends. But Bein Adam l'makom, we only speak to Rebbeinu Shalom about it. It's nobody's business. Any aver that I've done, Bein Adam l'makom, other than the Rebbeinu Shalom. I talk to Hashem. There could be exceptions if you need some help to figure things out and you want to work things out and things like that. But that's not B'teris confession. That's B'teris just, could you give me an idea and help me out or walk me through a challenge that I'm going through, but it's certainly not midin confession. So when the Kohen Gadol says Shem Hashem, it's creating a more intense presence of Hashem, that we're lifnei Hashem, that we're considered in front of Hashem, and now we have this perfect situation that we're standing there, and we're lifnei Hashem because the Kohen Gadol said his Shem Hashem, he said the Shem Hashem, so now is the time to do vidui, now is the time for titaru. Go make yourself pure. How do you make yourself pure? Say chatasi in front of Hashem. Nowadays, we don't have the Kohen Gadol in the Beis HaMikdash saying Shem Hashem. So what do we have? At what moment are we considered lifnei Hashem? At what moment must we stand still, stoic, not look at our phones, not turn around, not look at other things, and just be lifnei Hashem? What moment do we have every single day, 3 times a day, that we stand lifnei Hashem? Somebody? Shemoneh Esrei, by tefillah. Shemoneh Esrei, the private Shemoneh Esrei, Chazar Sashatz, the Chazan Shemoneh Esrei, same halachas. You know, unfortunately, most people don't treat Chazar Sashatz with the same halachas that they treat the private Shemoneh Esrei, but it's the same halachas. So we are considered lifnei Hashem during Shemoneh Esrei, during Chazar Sashatz. So our 10 viduyim that we must do, lifnei Hashem, in front of Hashem, titaru, you should purify yourself. By vidui, those 10 viduyim happen during tefillah, during our Shemoneh Esrei, during our quiet Shemoneh Esrei, during our Chazar Sashatz. And that explains what the Sharat Tzion says. The Sharat Tzion says there's not 10, there's one more, there's 11. How does the Sharat Tzion answer it? What? Somebody? It's not what? Only vidui that is said by tefillah counts. That 11th vidui that is said by slichas after Ma'ariv, that's not lifnei Hashem. That vidui does not count from the 10 viduyim. Did everybody get that? Clear? Geschmack? Gewaldig. Okay. Let's move on to another topic in Yom Kippur. This one's a little more of a medrash, a little less of a halacha. Medrash Rabbah. Last piece on the first side. We all know the episode with Esav and Yaakov, and when Rivka instructed Yaakov to go bring food to Yitzchak and to get the brachas instead of Esav. Right? Everybody familiar with that episode? Good. Vayomer Yaakov el Rivka imai. So Yaakov said back to Rivka, he first, he was not on board with this at the beginning. He said to his mother Rivka, Hein Esav achi, behold Esav my brother, ish seir. He's a hairy person. I don't mean hairy like, the Lakshan Kugel people. He's hairy, meaning that he was full of hair. He was full of hair. He had a lot of hair on his body. Let's skip the rest of that line and the line below it, and let's skip to Rabbi Levi. Rabbi Levi Omer. So the Medrash talks about this. What does this mean that Esav was a hairy person and Yaakov was an ish chalak, was a smooth person, hairless? So Yaakov's saying is that I'm not going to be able to go trick Yitzchak because he's going to feel and he's going to see that there's no hair. Esav has hair, I don't. Yitzchak's going to figure it out. The Medrash gives a beautiful mashal which really explains who we are, what we're doing on Yom Kippur. Rabbi Levi Omar. Rabbi Levi says, mashal lekavitz v'karach. You could say a story. Mashal, compare it to kavitz, we're going to call a hairy person, and a karach would be a bald person. Person doesn't have any hair. Shahayu oimdin al svas hagayrin, and they're standing right by the grain house. They're standing by the grain pile. And we know that by the grain pile, right, there's the grain, and then there's all the chaff that gets chopped off, gets broken off, and there's a lot of stuff going on there. The ola hamites and all the chaff from the grain, it went and it got tangled in bekavitz in the hairy person. And it got tangled in his hair. So this person, the hairy person, he went through the grain house and he walked out of the grain house and he looks like a piece of straw. He's got shell and he's got straw and he's got chaff and he's got all types of stuff all over him. Ola hamoitz bekerach, and when the smooth person, the person without hair, he went through the grain house and all the chaff and all the stuff, and it was a whirlwind of straw and chaff flying all over, and he also got dirty from it. But what did he do? Nasan yadei al roisha, he put his hand on his ear, the avira, and he wiped it off. He wiped it off, right? Everybody know whoever has like short hair barely uses any shampoo, right? It's just easy. Just wiped it right off, right? So two people walking through a grain house. A hairy person gets out of the grain house and it's going to be a big deal. You have to start picking out each piece of chaff, each piece of straw. Person without too much hair, bald person walks through, wipes it off, he's fine. Kach, so too, Esav harasha mislach lech ba'avoinais kol yemais hashana. Esav, the hairy person, he gets dirty with Averis the whole year long. Ve'ein loy b'ma yechaper, and he doesn't have any way, he doesn't have a tool how to get forgiveness for it, how to clean himself off. Aval, however, what? It's Velcro, yeah. Go ahead if you ever take Velcro and you put it to, let's say, my tie, right? It's going to rip out like all the threads from the tie, and then the Velcro, you could spend a half an hour trying to pick out each little piece of probably polyester, right? Aval Yaakov is different. Mislach lech ba'avoinus kol yemais hashana. He also, unfortunately, gets dirty with Averis all year long. He eats without a bracha, says things he shouldn't, he looks at things he shouldn't, does things he shouldn't. We all do that, right? We all get dirty with Averis all year round. However, v'ba Yom HaKippurim v'yesh le b'ma yechaper. But Yom Kippur comes and we have a way. We have a way of wiping it off. Shenemar, as it says, ki b'yom hazeh yechaper, because on this day you'll get a kapara. Let's just summarize it one more time, then I want to talk about it for a minute. Rabbi Levi says that the difference between Yaakov and Esav, it's not just about the hair and the baldness. It's a mashal to the way that we get tangled with Averis. We all get dirty with Averis. Esav has no way of cleaning himself off. and we do have a way of cleaning ourselves off. That's the mashal. That's what we need to get down. So not only do we have Yom Kippur, so there's 2 points. So we're saying is we have a way of cleaning ourselves off. But why do we have a way of cleaning ourselves off? Meaning the point over here is not only that Yom Kippur is some sort of supersonic vacuum cleaner. It's some sort of heavy-duty commercial grade, industrial grade cleaning agent. That's not what the Medrash is saying. The Medrash is not, I don't believe the Medrash is coming to teach us a lesson in the strength of Yom Kippur. That's not the focus of the Medrash. What is the focus of the Medrash? That Yom Kippur is an industrial grade cleaning agent? That Yom Kippur is one of those like vacuum cleaners you have by the car wash that could probably suck your whole body through into it? Well, what's the message of the Medrash? How come we are able to get clean? What's the difference between us and Esav? What? Somebody. Go ahead. We're not? We're not hairy. We're not hairy. Averis come and they fall on us. But every single yid, we are not hairy. It doesn't stick to us. It doesn't become part of us. It doesn't become like the thread stuck in the Velcro. It's only surface deep. It could be washed off. Think about like a glass pane, a little bit of a spritz. Water or soap, doesn't matter. You don't need anything too heavy. A little bit of spritz, a shmata, it's crystal clear again. The idea that the Medrash is telling us something very important of ourselves, that even when we do, over the course of the year, stumble, and we get a little bit of Averis, it doesn't become part of us. It doesn't sink in deep. It's like a thumbprint on a pane of glass. Just wipe it off with a wet shmata, and you're good to go. Every yid be'etzem, every yid in his depth, and not even so far deep, is a pure, clean person that Averis don't really stick to us. It's just an outer amount of dirt that could easily be wiped off. I think it's a very comforting thing. It's not where we are. It's not where we're comfortable. It's not part of our identity, these Averis. Sometimes guys struggle with things all the time. And I always ask, when you're brushing your teeth in the morning, you're looking in the mirror, what do you see? Do you see a guy that struggles with these things? Do you see the guy that's given up with something? Or do you see a good, from yeshiva boy that's in yeshiva, tries his hardest, has his ups, has his downs, but has his ups and has his downs again? It's not who we are. It's not who we are. Our Averis don't define us. They don't really stick to us. A little bit of Windex and a shmata and we're all clean again. I think that's the lesson of Yom Kippur. The lesson of Yom Kippur is, as strong and as mighty and as awesome of a day as Yom Kippur is, but it only works for us because of who we are. That these Averis don't define us. Who am I? I'm a good Yiddish teenager learning in yeshiva. That's who I am. The Averis? Yeah, it happens. We'll clean it off. We'll wipe it off. It'll be all clean. A little bit of Windex. Okay. Turn over the page. Moving on to another aspect of Yom Kippur. We mentioned this at the beginning, that there were 2 goats. There are 2 goats, the major part of Musaf, very significant part of Musaf. It talks about the Avodah that happened in the Beis HaMikdash on Yom Kippur, and we know there were 2 goats. There was a Soyer LaHashem and a Soyer LaAzazel. Soyer LaHashem was brought as a carbon in the Beis HaMikdash, and the Soyer LaAzazel that was sent off a cliff, the Kohen did vidui on it. He said, Ana Hashem, Chatanu, Avinu, Pashanu. He said a vidui with his hands on top of the goat, and the goat was sent with a trusted person outside of Yerushalayim. It was thrown off a cliff, and there was a red string hanging in the Beis HaMikdash, and when that goat went over the cliff, that red string turned white. It was a big miracle. It happened in the first Beis HaMikdash. Let's read the psukim that talk about it. V'samach Aaron es shtei yadav. Aaron would put both of his hands and lean al reish hasoyer on the head, hasoyer achai, on the head of the living goat. V'hisvada alav, and he would confess, he would say vidui on this goat, es kol avonos b'nei Yisrael, all of b'nei Yisrael's sins, v'es kol pishayim l'chol chatasam, all their other types of sins. V'nosan oisam al roish hasoyer, he would put all of these averis onto the head of the goat, v'shilach biad ish iti, and he would send this goat with an appointed person, hamidbara, to the desert. Yes. V'nasa hasoyer alav es kol avonosam, and this soyer would carry on it all of the averis el eretz gezerah, to this uninhabited wasteland. V'shilach es hasoyer b'midbar, and they would send the soyer to the desert. So that was a major part, a very significant part of the Avodah on Yom Kippur. There were other important parts, Ketairis, we said the Shem Hashem, bowing in the Beis HaMikdash. A very significant part were these two goats. There was a lottery cast. They brought two goats. There was a lottery cast. One said La Hashem, and that was the goat that was brought as a carbon inside the Beis HaMikdash. And the other one, the other lottery ticket said La Zazel, to be sent out to wasteland, and that was put on the other goat. This goat that was sent out to the wasteland, the Torah clearly tells us, it carried with us all of Bnei Yisrael, all of mine, all of yours, everybody's Averis, and those Averis went away. Very similar exactly to the way we understand Tashlech. We're throwing away our Averis. Why are we able to just throw away our Averis like that? I mean, is it that easy? The answer it is, because we're not hairy. It's not skin deep. It doesn't go deep. It's a little bit of schmutz on a glass window. So the Mishnah says something very interesting. Shnei Seirei Yom Kippurim, these two goats that they would buy for Yom Kippur, again, one was Lashem, brought as a carbon, one was Azazel. Mitzvason shiyu shneien shavin. The mitzvah was, the best way to perform this was that they should be equal. These goats should be equal, b'mara in appearance. They should be twin goats. They should look the same. Ubekaima, and in height, ubedamim, they should cost the same. Ubelikichas and ka'echad, and you should buy them, you should purchase them in one transaction. Interesting. Mishnah and Yuma tells me these two goats, there was a mitzvah that these two goats should be identical and they should be bought in the same transaction. They should look the same, have the same coloring, have the same height, they should cost the same. They should be identical goats. What's pshat? So I saw a beautiful pshat from Reb Leib Mintzberg, and he based it on this Seforno. So before we get to the pshat, let's just make sure we got down the Mishnah, and we get down the previous one. The previous one talks about the goat that we sent La'Azazel. Aaron HaKohen would put all of Bnei Yisrael's Averis, and that goat would carry those Averis out to the desert. Second piece, Masnisan, the Mishnah we have in Yuma tells me there's a mitzvah that these two goats ought to be identical. They should look the same, cost the same, and be the same size. And they should be purchased in the same transaction. $100 for two goats. Not one transaction and the second one, $100 for two goats. What's pshat? Why do these goats need to be identical? So before we get to this last piece, let's talk about a normal carbon chatas. What would be a scenario somebody would have to bring a carbon chatas? Very good. Somebody by mistake doesn't realize it's Shabbos. He wakes up in the morning, thinks it's Friday, goes downstairs and fries himself an egg. He would bring a carbon chatas. What happens with a carbon chatas? It's brought as a carbon in the Beis HaMikdash. Now you confess this carbon chatas is there to fix, to get a kapara of forgiveness for the aver that you've done. If a person did an aver that warrants a carbon chatas, this carbon chatas, you say vidui, you confess your avera, and this carbon chatas, so to speak, gets you a kapara for that aver that you've done. But yet it's still brought in the Beis HaMikdash. So we see that we could bring a carbon in the Beis HaMikdash that has an avera on it. That happens all the time. Carbon chatoyos were bought every day. People could bring a carbon chatas any day. Person chas v'shalom committed an avera, warrants a carbon chatas, brings the animal, confesses his avera on it, and the animal's brought as a carbon. The kehana eat a piece of it, and the rest is burnt on the mizbeach. Says the Seforno about this goat that we're sending with all of Bnei Yisrael's sins on it. Shnei Seirim, Izim Lechatas. 2 goats for Chatas. Maybe you're right. Maybe. Okay, yeah. Yeah, you're right. One of the Chatas, not an Eilah. Harishain al Chatoim b'mikdash. The first carbon was brought as a carbon Chatas for any Avera that happened in the Beis HaMikdash. V'mishtaleach, but the one that was sent away to the desert, al shar Chatoi tzibur, for everybody, for the whole community, Gans Klal Yisrael's Averis, Asher leroiv tumasai, since there is so much on that goat, there are so many Averis, the entire Klal Yisrael, the millions of Yidden, and all of the Averis that they've done over the course of the year, it creates so much, there's so much Avera that's been put onto this goat, lo yeyois, it's not proper, lizabeach, to bring it as a zevach, to bring it as a carbon in the Beis HaMikdash, umitami mishalchay, and even the person that brings it to the desert, he actually becomes tummy from doing it. So the Seforno says that technically, this is, Rabbi Mintzberg explains based on this Seforno, technically we know that a carbon chatas could be brought in the Beis HaMikdash, and it has an aveira on it. But the idea behind the soyer, the idea behind this goat that was sent out to the desert, is that it's too much. It's too much. There's too many aveiras. That goat that's got millions of people, tens of millions of aveiras that have been put onto this goat, that goat can't be brought into Beis HaMikdash. The only thing you can do with that goat is to take it off to the desert and dispose of it over there. Push it off a cliff. Explains Rabbi Mintzberg, but that also explains why these 2 goats have to be identical. Because normally, for an aveira, it's a 1-goat job. It's a 1-goat job. You put the aveira onto the goat, and you bring it as a carbon. These 2 goats, the one that was brought in the Beis HaMikdash, and then the one that was sent out to the desert, it's really 1 carbon. We just have to split into 2 because we can't have all of those aveiras sitting on an animal being brought as a carbon in the Beis HaMikdash. So therefore, it's really 1 carbon, and therefore when you buy them, you should buy identical ones. They should be the same size, the same color, the same everything, same price. Because it's 1 carbon that's split into 2 parts. There's the vidui part, there's the putting the aveira and sending it away part, and then there's the carbon part. And normally the 2 of them could exist in 1 body. It's just since on Yom Kippur, it's the big cleanup. It's the big cleanup. And we're able to get rid of all these aveiras because we are really clean, smooth people. And these aveiras could easily come off, and we could just place them somewhere and send them off. So since it's big cleanup, you can't make do with just 1 garbage bag. You need 2. And you can't bring all those aveiras into the Beis HaMikdash. You have to send all those aveiras off. But it's really 1 job. It's 1 carbon. Part that has to be brought as a carbon, and the part that has to go ahead and carry away, to clean away our aveiras. Normally, that could be accomplished with 1 animal. Because of the awesomeness of Yom Kippur, because of the great cleanup of Yom Kippur, we need 2 animals, but it's really 1 carbon made out of 2 animals.